Can you imagine what our neighborhoods, our cities, even our world would look like if the people that followed Jesus would simply take the second half of the Great Commandment literally and seriously? Is it possible that the solution to our society's biggest problems has been sitting right underneath our nose for the last 2,000 years, but that most Christians have actually found a loophole, a way out of doing what Jesus said matters most? When the lawyer approached Jesus and said, "What's the one thing I must do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." What happens next is fascinating. The text says, and in order to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" This man goes and has a very straightforward question for Jesus. He gets a very straightforward answer. And his first initial thought is, how do I get out of this? Where is the loophole? And the way that he tries to find the loophole is by changing and trying to define the word neighbor so that it most easily fits in to the life that he's already living. Now, we've all, that was 2,000 years ago. We've grown and progressed over those last 2,000 years. Surely none of us would be tempting to do that exact same thing, to define the word neighbor so that it most easily fits into our life that we're living. Well, of course, that's not the case. Most of us, myself included, have in some way fallen into that trap, have tried to define that word neighbor so that it begins to kind of almost lose some of its power. We end up looking at that parable of the Good Samaritan, and we think to ourselves, wow, that's incredible. Everyone is my neighbor. And I'm doing a lot of good stuff, so I'm kind of just neighboring all the time. And when we do that, we end up with this metaphoric love for our metaphoric neighbors, and metaphorically, we're killing it. But in real life, there's people who live right across the street, and oftentimes we don't even know their names. Well, we're learning that there's actually great power in drawing a circle around the places that we live and then working out from there. And we're learning that when it comes to neighboring, you actually get disproportionate results. For what you put in, big things end up happening. One of the most important things that we can do is to make a commitment to learn and retain and use the names of the people who live right around us. And when I began to do this in my life, it meant that I needed to go and eat some crow. I had to walk across the street and have conversations like this. Hey, I know that we've lived next to each other for 18 months, and I know that I've met you 3 times, but I actually forgot your name. And as I started to do that, I did something very important. I went home and I just started to simply write down the names of the people who lived right around me. And by doing that, these people went from people who drove certain types of cars or had a certain occupation or a number of kids to real people with real names and who have real stories. And God started to do something in my life. These people started to get inside of my thoughts. They started to get inside of my prayers. And this natural progression began to happen. It went from, hey, man, to, hey, Matt, to, hey, Matt, how are things going? To, hey, Matt, could you just help me move this thing in my garage? To, hey, why don't you guys just come over and watch the game? To sitting across a dining room table, talking about the things that we dream about, talking about the things that we're passionate about, the things that make us tick. And that didn't happen overnight. That's a 12, 18-month journey. But it never starts if you don't learn the person's name. We've learned that one of the most important characteristics of someone who's going to be a good neighbor is a willingness to lean into mildly awkward moments. It is a little bit awkward to walk across the street and reintroduce yourself to someone that you've lived next to for a long, long time. But it makes a big difference. And so this week, we just want to encourage you to get quiet, to get still, to kind of think about the houses, the places that are right around you, and then to simply ask God, all right, God, what's the next step? What's that next step that I can take in order to take the second half of the Great Commandment literally and seriously? Walk across the street and take the next step.